Dr. Ekta?
Yes, sir.
We are good to go. You can start.
Greetings from Sam Higginbottom, University of Agriculture, Technology and Sciences, Prayagraj. Before starting the proceedings of the day, I thank Almighty God for protecting us and bringing us together on this platform to learn, share, and reach a very specific target group through this webinar. Now, I request our university chaplain, Pastor Richmond Saxena, to seek blessings from the Almighty God to bless each one of us to be gainfully benefited by the webinar in these difficult times. Over to you, Pastor Saxena.
Thank you, madam. I would like to read from Bible, Matthew chapter 6, verse 25 onwards. It says, "Therefore I tell you, do not be anxious about your life, what you will eat or what you will drink, nor about your body, what you will put on. Is not life more than food, and the body more than clothing? Look at the birds of the air. They neither sow nor reap, nor gather into barns, and yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not of more value than they? And each of you, by being anxious, can add a single hour to his span of life? And why are you anxious about clothing? Consider the lilies of the field, how they grow. They neither toil nor spin. Yet I tell you, even Solomon in all his glory was not arrayed like one of these. But if God so clothes the grass of the field, which today is alive, and tomorrow is thrown into the oven, will he not much more clothe you, O you of little faith? Therefore, do not be anxious. What shall we drink? What shall we eat? What shall we wear? But seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be added unto you." Let us look our Lord in prayer. Our gracious Heavenly Father, we come into thy presence. We are thankful and grateful to you for this lovely afternoon you have given to all of us so that we can be part of this webinar, national webinar, organized by Department of Textiles and Apparel Designing, Ethleind College of Home Science, Sam Higginbottom, University of Agriculture, Technology and Sciences. And we are thankful, Lord, for the topic, Apparel and Fashion World Post-Pandemic Perspective. We know, Lord, that you have given us the wisdom to design various clothings, especially during the time of need also. And we know that you are the one who is the ultimate provider. We continuously seek you and ask your blessing as we learn so many things, Lord, in this world. We are thankful for this particular department, for the organizing committee, organizing secretaries, and the dean of the college, that you continue to give them grace that at this time, at this juncture, when the world is facing this crisis, suffering because of the pandemic, let this webinar be a blessing for many. There are so many people who are suffering. There are so many people who have become poor. So many people, they don't have even proper clothing. Lord, we pray that you turn the hearts of those people, Lord, who really want to do something for you, that they may understand the need of the people and provide them. We pray for this technology, that through this technology, we may able to help the researchers, the participants, the students, professors, teaching staff, Lord, to be equipped in this area. We are thankful, Lord, for the panelists. We are thankful, Lord, for the speakers who will be delivering the the expertise through this webinar. We pray that your blessing be upon them. We continue to pray for our university, that your blessing be upon our university. We pray for our Honorable Vice Chancellor, sir, under whose leadership this university is growing. Bless him. We pray for our Pro Vice Chancellors. We pray for our Registrar, sir, and also we pray for our Joint Registrar, Engineer Wesley, as he coordinates the whole technology and connects all of us, Lord Jesus. We pray that you continue to give him wisdom and the entire team. We pray for all the staff members, teaching, non-teaching staff, and students of our university, that your blessing be upon our university. Once again, we commit this entire webinar into your mighty hand, and we pray that you are going to guide us and help us. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Pastor Saxena, for seeking blessings for the webinar and well-being of human being. I, Ekta Sharma, Assistant Professor and in charge at Department of Textiles and Apparel Designing, Ethleind College of Home Science, SHUATS, take this privilege to welcome the gathering. I welcome our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Reverend Professor Dr. R.B. Lal, sir. I also welcome our Pro Vice Chancellor, sir, Academic Affairs and Quality Assurance, Dr. A.K.A. Lawrence, Pro Vice Chancellor Administration, Professor Dr. S.B. Lal, Pro Vice Chancellor Planning, Monitoring and Development, Professor Dr. S. Herbert, Registrar of the University, Professor Dr. Robin L. Prasad, Joint Registrar Administration and Chairman, Social Media Committee, Engineer C.J. Wesley, Convener of the webinar and Dean, Ethleind College of Home Science, Professor Dr. Ranu Prasad. We are privileged to have our esteemed speakers for today's webinar, Mr. Vivek Agarwal, who is Assistant Director of Northern India Textile Research Association, NITRA, Ghaziabad. Dr. Gitika Jaspal, Assistant Professor, Department of Family and Consumer Sciences, North Carolina Agriculture and Technology State University, Greensboro, USA. And Mr. Georgie Sunny, Assistant Professor, Berlioz Institute of Technology, Chennai. I welcome you all on the national webinar to address post-pandemic perspective in the apparel and fashion world, organized by the Department of Textiles and Apparel Designing, Ethleind College of Home Science, SHUATS, Prayagraj. I would also like to welcome the teaching faculty of various colleges, fashion industrialists, researchers, and other participants from all over the nation. I would now request Engineer C.J. Wesley, Joint Registrar, to share a brief sketch of the university with the House. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Ekta. Respected speakers and my dear participants, Samingabottom University of Agriculture, Technology and Sciences, SHUATS, earlier known as Allahabad Agriculture Institute, was established in the year 1910 under the leadership of Dr. Sam Higginbottom, an American scientist. The institution has completed more than 110 years of dedicated and relentless service to the nation with its mission, Gospel and Plow, and vision, Feed the Hungry, Serve the Land. Under the dynamic leadership of our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Most Reverend Professor Rajendra B. Lal, Allahabad Agriculture Institute was conferred the deemed to be university status by MHRD Government of India in the year 2000. It was later renamed during our centenary year, that is 2010, as Sam Higginbottom Institute of Agriculture, Technology and Sciences, deemed to be university by MHRD Government of India. This was to honor our founder during the centenary year. In the year 2016, after considering the adequate availability of teaching and non-teaching staff and other essential infrastructure facilities, the Uttar Pradesh legislature decided to upgrade and reconstitute us as a full-fledged state university under a state act. Hence now we are Sam Higginbottom University of Agriculture, Technology and Sciences. SHUATS is a united endeavor of Christian community in India and promoting rural life and development in conformity with the Christian vision of humankind and the creation. The university is held in trust as a common ecumenical heritage by the Christian churches and Christian organizations of this country. It seeks to be a national center of professional education, excellence in education and service to the people, with participation of students and faculty members from all over the India and abroad. We operate with Faculty of Agriculture, Engineering and Technology, Business Studies, Sciences, Animal Husbandry, Humanities and Education, Film, Mass Communication and Health Sciences. SHUATS is an ISO 9001-2015 certified institution and a recognized member of associations including Association of Indian Universities, Indian Agriculture Universities Association, International Association of Universities, All India Association of Christian Higher Education, Association of Commonwealth Universities, Asia Pacific Association of Agriculture Research Institutions, Global Consortium of Higher Education and Research, and many others. The university has signed many international MOUs on academics and research collaborations with national institutions and international institutions. NAC, an autonomous institution of University Grants Commission, accredited us with A grade in the year 2013. And in 2014, MHRD Government of India placed us when we were a deemed university among the A grade deemed universities in the country. Currently, we have 13,000 students on campus pursuing their higher studies, and we do have more than 2,000 teaching and non-teaching faculty members from across the country. We do offer 47 undergraduate programs and 110 postgraduate programs. These words, I would like to welcome each one of you on behalf of the university and our Honorable Vice Chancellor. Wish you all a wonderful experience through this course of this webinar. All the very best, and over to you, Dr. Ekta.
Thank you, sir, for introducing participants with a university background, its achievement, and your word of encouragement. Before inviting the speakers, I would like to brief the participants regarding the need and objective of the webinar. The COVID-19 pandemic shockwave that first emerged in the city of Wuhan, China, has severely hit each and every sphere around the world and crumpled the social fabric of human life, including the fashion industry. Be it way we address our financial goals and livelihoods, or the way we address the pandemic has altered it all. As pandemic impacts more people every day, most sectors of the economy have been reduced to a standstill. And apparel manufacturing industry is among the one of the severely hit sectors. The nationwide lockdown has led to a temporary closure of apparel manufacturing factories, and almost all buyers are canceling or postponing the orders as they have big inventories. New store openings have stopped, and even domestic stores are facing an inventory buildup due to hindrance in the supply chain. The daily wage workers, who form 80% of the workforce in garment factories, have returned to their respective villages. India's major export destination, the United States and Europe, are the worst affected. It is tough to say when these countries will return to normal life. And even if they do, how soon will the consumer restart to think and spend on clothing, as the lockdown has already resulted in recession and unemployment for many. Apart from apparel, the fashion industry has also been negatively impacted by the coronavirus outbreak on every imaginable level. There is no question, however, that the pandemic will have an effect on our purchasing power, and fashion buyers will no longer be our priority. Fashion historians point out that people change their style after the 1918 flu pandemic that transformed people's wardrobe to ready-to-wear clothing. Political conflicts in 40s called for functional wear, and now COVID-19 pandemic trending the face mask as a fashion statement. It has been suggested that possibly no other piece of clothing that has trajectory like face mask, something that once worn as fashion statement, have become indispensable amid the coronavirus pandemic. Some of the trend forecasters predict a shift towards sustainable fashion wear. This particular movement has become so pivotal in fashion industry as consumers are looking for new solutions. It has led to a real challenge for the fashion and apparel industries, and fashion forecasters and retailers are arguably among the biggest victims of COVID-19 crisis. Because even once the coronavirus pandemic has settled somewhat, there are questions about what the fashion industry will look like, how we can protect ourselves with what we are wearing. Therefore, in order to understand the impact of the COVID-19 crisis on apparel manufacturers, fashion retailers, and consumers, along with discussing the ideas that can be useful for apparel and fashion industry and to explore the post-pandemic opportunities for Indian apparel business and sustainable fashion. The present webinar on the topic Apparel and Fashion World Post-Pandemic Perspective has been organized by the Department of Textiles and Apparel Designing, Ethleind College of Home Science, SHUATS. I hope the present webinar will enlighten the participants by the perspectives provided by experts from the fashion and apparel industry. Now, we will move towards the technical sessions, and we are very honored to have Mr. Vivek Agarwal, Assistant Director, Northern India Textile Research Association, Nitra, Ghaziabad, linked to Ministry of Textiles with us. Mr. Agarwal holds BTech and MS in Textile Technology from Anna University, Chennai, and postgraduate diploma in Business Administration from IMT Ghaziabad. He has close to 3 decades of rich experience across diverse vehicles like manufacturing, quality assurance, training and education, consultancy and research. He has been involved in 4 major research projects sponsored by various government agencies. He has executed close to 100 training and consultancy assignments in textiles and apparel industry, including assignments overseas. He has co-authored 5 books, edited 8 books, and presented over 15 research papers in leading national and international conferences, trade magazines, and journals. Mr. Agarwal has wide international exposure, having traveled to USA, Europe, and Africa. At present, he is working as Assistant Director with Northern India Textile Research Association, Nitra, Ghaziabad, and is spearheading academics, consultancy, and research activities pertaining to apparel sector. On this forum, Mr. Agarwal will share his views on post-COVID-19 emerging opportunities for Indian apparel business. I welcome Mr. Agarwal. Over to you, sir.
A big thank you for a very nice and long introduction. You could have actually cut it short. I hope I am audible to everyone.
Yes.
Let me first congratulate the entire team of University of Allahabad for conducting this webinar on a very, very important topic on the apparel and fashion world post-pandemic perspective. I'm during the next 35 to 40 minutes, I shall be taking you through the kind of challenges the global apparel industry is facing and what are the opportunities that could be available for the Indian apparel businesses globally. I hope everyone is able to see this screen. Am I audible to everyone, and can everyone see the screen, please?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
You're audible, sir.
Okay. So I shall be talking about what is the impact of the COVID-19 in general, with specific reference to the apparel sectors, and what kind of opportunities would be there for the Indian apparel businesses if they can, catch up those opportunities properly. So the basic contents of my presentation would be what are the key impacting factors that are affecting the businesses. So the first factor is obviously lockdown. We have been in a lockdown for almost 4 months now. And what kind of shrinkage are we going to witness in terms of economy? I shall be basically more focusing on the US and European markets as the Indian exports are majorly going into these 2 continents. Then what are the expected impacts on the apparel consumptions as well as imports? So how the consumption of apparel, it's basically more of secondary data that I have collected from various sources. So how the consumption of apparel is going to be impacted in US. In fact, we are fortunate to have Dr. Gitika, who is settled in US. So she will be able to throw more light on the prevailing situation there. Then what are the current and expected sourcing scenarios, and what are the key takeaways or the message for the Indian apparel exporters, like in terms of designing new strategies and taking advantage of the COVID situation? As we all know that more and more buyers are now trying to move out of China and looking for new manufacturing destinations. So this is just to kickstart the whole discussion. Since mid-March, most of the major fashion brands have declared complete store closures. So when we talk about all big brands like Gap, H&M, Inditex, Levi's, J. Crew, Benetton, most of these stores are closed, uh, right? So and it is closed since March, so almost 4 months now. So a lot of business has actually shut down, and they're not getting new. The customers are not walking in. Now let us look at what is the GDP projection for US and Europe for 2020. Now, if I'll just take it back for the last 3 years, how EU and US were doing actually. In 2017, if we look at the GDP grew for about 2.5% for the European Union. When I'm talking about EU, we are talking about EU 28, which is basically a conglomerate of 28 countries. And then the US economy grew by about 2.1%, 2.4% rather. Moving on to 2018, we saw a slight decline in the European Union, and which further declined in 2019, and the GDP grew was only 1.2% in 2019. So this has been the story for the last 3 years with the European Union. So far as US was concerned, the GDP growth was around 2.54% in 2017, and it is more or less stable for the last 3 years. There was a slight increase in 2018 to 2.9%. Now let us look at, because of the COVID situation, what kind of projections are we having for 2020? Now we are talking in terms of real GDP growth. So there are a couple of forecasts which are available. Say for example, one was done by IMF, which was done in October 2019. That was pre-COVID times, and it indicated that the European Union will have a growth of about 1.4% in GDP, whereas US will grow by about 2.1%. So this was the situation somewhere in the month of October 2019. Now, as we moved on, the first case struck back somewhere in December in China, and then since then, every country has been facing this huge problem of COVID. So, if we look at the situation now, the Economic Intelligence Unit on 26th of March 2020 forecasted that the European Union will have a negative GDP growth of about close to 6%, whereas US will be having a negative growth of about 3%. So this was the projection given by the Economist Intelligence Unit as on 26th of March 2020. Then we have a Think ING group, which gave different scenarios depending upon the type of situation that emerges. So if we look at the best case scenario here, we are still talking about a negative GDP growth. So actually it is not a growth, it is a deflation now. So we are talking about anywhere between 3.2% for European Union and 3.6% for the US, negative GDP growth. And if we talk about the worst case scenario, the figure could be as high as 16% for the European Union and 15% for the US. So the best case, is also talking about some anywhere between 3 to 4%, and the worst case we are talking about a negative 15% GDP growth. So basically, even if we talk about the best case scenario, we are expecting US economy to shrink by about 3 to 4%, whereas in case of European Union, we are looking at anywhere between 5 to 6% shrinkage in the GDP. So now, what will be the impact of this GDP shrinkage on the apparel consumptions? Because everything will be affected. Once the GDP is on the negative side, then it will have impact across various products and various segments of manufacturing as well as services. So now let us look, we are specifically talking with reference to apparel consumption. Online stores remain the only option to buy apparels, but consumers are primarily focusing on grocery, medicines, and staple purchases. So obviously, people have lost jobs, there have been reductions in their salaries, right? So everyone is postponing the purchases of the apparel for the time being, and they are more focusing on the medicine, grocery, and the staple purchases. So apparel purchases will largely be delayed due to, as there is no urgency to replenish. Obviously, I can always wait for a few months before going to buy my new t-shirt or a trouser, right? An uncertain economic scenario. The scenario, as I discussed, is not good. So many people have lost jobs in Europe and US as well as in India. So across the world, the situation is very bad. So people are actually focusing only on the staple thing and postponing most of the purchases with respect to the apparels. A reduction in occasions to go out. Obviously, if we talk about India, all the schools are closed till now, all the colleges are closed till now, offices and restaurants have started opening only recently. So all these things are going to actually affect the consumption of apparel, because I don't have reasons to go out. So obviously I don't need so many apparel, so many variety of apparel. And the same situation exists in US and Europe. And limited product options and late and expensive deliveries. So obviously the options are very limited now. Whatever inventory is available, you have to manage with that, because the buyers are not really placing orders for the future, right? The whatever orders are there, they will be arriving late because of the logistics issue. So that overall deliveries are becoming very, very expensive. And on the other hand, you don't have jobs, the economy is shrinking. So it is all going to impact the consumption of apparels in the society. Now, what is the difference between the American society and the European? There is a slight contrast here. US as a society is more consumerist compared to Europe. You must have seen, Europe, practically all major towns and countries of Europe were shut down, but US still had partial shutdown. Only in some states there was shutdown. That too, the shutdown was partial. Some states did not see any kind of shutdown at all. So US has been more on the liberal side, right from the president down to the public at large. So there is more degree of consumerism in the US society as compared to the European society. I mean, if you look at the GDP figures of the last 3 years, that also indicates the European Union has been shrinking the GDP of the whole continent as such. 2019, we just had 1.2% growth in the GDP. So younger population with a habit of regular spending will cause US to maintain a tad higher consumption than EU during the lockdown period, and more importantly, faster return to normal consumption levels. So if we compare US and Europe, we are expecting that the US society will come out faster from this pandemic and will start resuming their normal activities and consumption earlier than the European markets. European economy was already under stress for last couple of years. I've already discussed this. Countries like Italy and Spain, having been worst hit by the epidemic, will cause lower consumption levels in the 2020. So to summarize this part, the European market, if we look at these figures, what we are expected to witness rather is, in the European Union markets, 41% less consumption due to store closures, GDP shrinkage by 5 to 6%, and the net impact of these two will be 45% lower apparel consumption in 2020. Now, these are basically all the forecasts done by various agencies, both in India as well as abroad. So we are expecting the apparel consumption in EU to be lowered by about 45%. So which is a huge figure in itself. Now, when it comes to US market, we are looking at about 37% less consumption due to store closures and a GDP shrinkage of about 3 to 4%. So the combined effect of these two will be approximately 40% lower apparel consumption in 2020. So now that means minimum is 40% in case of US and 45% we are looking at EU. Now let us look at these percentages in terms of figures, because ultimately businesses is all about numbers. It's all about revenues. So how much money are we going to lose in 2020 because of slide in the apparel consumption? So if we look at 2017, 18 and 19 figures, the dark blue is the European Union and the light blue indicates the US pattern. So European Union had a consumption of about $403 billion. All these figures are in $1 billion, which grew by about 6% in 2018 and about 3% in 2019. So in 2019, the figures in EU stood at about $440 billion US. And in case of US, it was close to about 275 US billion dollars. Now with a shrinkage of 40% and 45%, now these figures are going to come down to about $240 billion for EU market and $165 billion for the US market. So we are looking at a combined reduction of about $308 billion in apparel consumption. Just imagine the total textile and apparel trade is about $800 billion, and we are talking about a reduction of about close to $300 billion in the apparel consumption, right? And we are only talking about EU and US. No, there are so many other countries which I'm not referring to in the presentation. So now this $308 billion reduction in apparel consumption is obviously going to affect my imports. The imports of the US as well as the import of the EU. So because a lot of things are manufactured well within with their premises, so obviously it is not that all the $308 billion are being impacted worldwide. So the impact will be approximately $122 billion so far as import part is concerned, right? So we are looking at about $34 billion reduction in the import in case of US, and we are talking about a reduction of about $88 billion in case of European Union. So this is where the rest of the countries need to be careful that the import in these two major importing nations are going to be affected to about $120 US billion. So we have to protect ourselves now, the exporting nations, to minimize our losses. Now, these are some of the statements which we have collected from what the different global brands are saying for the last 3 months. I'll not read out all of them. I'll just handpick one or two, just to send the message across. Say, for example, if we look at the statement of the CNA, it has close to almost 1,400 stores across Europe. This has resulted in a complete loss of store sales with no definite end in sight. So they are not clear how the market is going to evolve, how the business is going to evolve, how things are going to settle down. As a traditional high street retailer, we cannot compensate for the loss of revenue through our CNA online sales. So everybody has moved on to online sales, but obviously the amount of business that is getting generated is still not enough to compensate. This is what a leading brand like CNA feels. If we talk about Primark, we are losing sales of close to 650 pounds a month, million pounds a month. Just look at the numbers. We have large quantities of existing stock in our stores, our depots, and in transit that is paid for. If we had not taken this action, we would have been taking delivery of stock that we simply could not sell. So if you read any of these statements, it smell basically, look, let us take one more example of H&M. We will of course pay for these goods, and we will do it under agreed payment terms. So H&M is little more sympathetic, I would say, and more forthcoming and supporting. This is in accordance with our responsible purchasing practices, and not only in case of Bangladesh, but in also in all production countries. Because there has been a lot of pressure from Bangladesh, India, and other countries who are exporting to H&M, that please do not cancel or postpone your orders. We have been working with you for such a long time. It's only a temporary phase, and we need to work together and do hand holding. So H&M has been doing a lot of sourcing from India, Bangladesh. So this was a statement made in response to the appeal made by the Bangladesh Garment Export Association president, that please do not do, it is going to create havoc in Bangladesh. And thereafter, we also saw the Textile Minister of India, Honorable Smriti Irani ji, also making a similar appeal to most of the buyers, that please carry on with this business as usual, so that it doesn't really affect large number of jobs. Now, what has been the sourcing scenarios? What are the patterns if we talk about in terms of sourcing in the last 3 years? who are the major players in this business, and what is their the amount of money they are into kind of exports, because most of these big brands are exporting from importing from countries like India, Bangladesh, Mexico, Poland, etc. What is the current scenario? When I say current, I am basically talking about pre-COVID situation, and then we will compare it with how things are going to change in post-COVID scenario. Now let us look at the current situation. Now if we look at the current situation, that is pre-COVID situation, China's share has reduced from 17% to 15% in the last 3 years. Now this slide is with a specific reference to the European Union, and the gap has been mainly filled by Bangladesh, the Netherlands, and Poland. So in EU markets, India hasn't really been able to make substantial gains over the last 3 years. We have the figures for 2017, 2018, and 2019. So if you look at India, India is here with just about a share of 3% in the global apparel business. So the leaders are China, Germany, Bangladesh. Bangladesh, despite being a very small country, has has exceeded actually India by leaps and bounds, with about close to 10% market share in the European market. Then followed by Italy, Turkey, Netherlands, Spain, France, Poland, Belgium, and India is close to I think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, almost at 10th position in the global apparel business so far as exports to the EU markets or imports to the EU markets are concerned. And it is very closely followed by UK, Cambodia, Vietnam, and Pakistan. So Cambodia and Pakistan, I would just like to inform everyone, they are catching up very, very fast. I mean, they are just neck to neck with India in many product categories. We will discuss this later. So there is very strong competition for India. So we just cannot be complacent and relax even a slight bit. Otherwise, these guys are going to overtake us very fast. Now, looking at the US picture, we have US is slightly better for India. We are at number 5 in terms of rank, but still our market share is only about 5%. Global trade market share. No, we are talking about an $800 billion industry, and the share is just about 5%. So for example, this is with reference to US. So China is, if you see, it's a massive share. Almost 1 in 3 apparels in US is actually made in China, with close to 30% share. Vietnam, you see, as I was telling you, Vietnam and Cambodia, Vietnam has already overtaken India so far as US markets are concerned. Bangladesh is well ahead of India. Indonesia is well ahead of India, right? And the reason primarily is because there are certain weaknesses in our Indian supply chain, which is not really able to push us further and take maximum advantage of the situations. And India is very closely followed by Mexico, Honduras, Cambodia, El Salvador, and Nicaragua. So these are some of the top 10 suppliers. So, and whatever slight reduction has taken place in case of China's share, it has been largely filled by countries like Vietnam and Bangladesh. So India has a lot of catching up to do, both in the US market as well as in the European market. And that is why when this pandemic happened, there are a lot of expectations from Indian exporters. A lot of orders are actually likely to flow into India, but it has really doesn't happen so far. I mean, I've been observing it for last 2 months or so ever since the industry has started getting back to business. Most of the garment exporters are still busy making PPEs and masks, and as the situation hasn't really become normal. Now, what could be the potential scenarios for 2020? Just let us have a look at this. When we are talking about, now we are talking about COVID situation, right? In the previous 2 slides, we were talking about 2017, 2018, and 2019. And now we are talking about what could happen in a COVID situation over the next 2-3 months or 6 months. So basically, we would say that there are 2 major possibilities. The first possibility says China loses significant market share in US and EU, Spain and Italy also loses market share in these markets. So in one scenario, we are talking about a situation where China is losing share. At the same time, Spain and Italy are also losing share when it comes to European markets. And the second scenario is China is able to maintain its share by lowering prices. Although this looks very unlikely now, there's so much of international pressure being mounted on China from all the major countries in the world. But still, as a hypothetical situation, we can still, because it is not easy to rule out China by any stretch of imagination, so far as apparel business is concerned. At least that is my perspective. Now, if we are talking about the first scenario, then again it can be divided into two sub scenarios. The first is other competitive exporters take up China's share, as we saw in the previous two slides. Vietnam, Bangladesh, Poland have actually taken up some of the space vacated by China in terms of market share percentages. So the other competitive exporters take up China's share, Bangladesh and Vietnam in both the markets, plus Turkey and Poland in the EU market. So this is basically, I am discussing with respect to both EU and US. So in case of both these segments, Bangladesh and Vietnam can play a major role, whereas with a specific reference to EU, Turkey and Poland can also chip in with the China's share. So that is scenario one. The second scenario within that major subsegment is India is also able to increase its share in both the markets. So in the first scenario, we are not talking about, we are just simply assuming that India's share will remain as it is. It is not going to impact much, right? But in the second scenario, we are discussing that if Indian exporter or if the Indian government and exporters together are able to, take the bull by its horns, as we say, and actually make some greater inroads and increase our share in the both the markets. So that is scenario two. And obviously, if China is also able to maintain the share, nothing is going to change. What we saw in 2019 will remain, will continue in 2020 also. So now let us look at now these are the three scenarios. Now let us look at what could be the India's exports under these scenarios. Now India is competitive in cotton products, right? So we are basically known for cotton products and women's fashion wear. So these two are major strength areas so far as Indian export industry is concerned. But once the markets revives in the second H2 of 2020, where H2 means basically we are referring to the second half, the winter season. So demand in US and Europe will be more for autumn winter season products where India's expertise is missing. Now this is the biggest problem for the Indian exporters. Now, once the markets start settling down and reviving, the kind of products they would be looking at, India is not really very comfortable or very well positioned in those products. So that is the biggest challenge that Indian exporters would have to actually face. Also, by that time, China would be fully geared up for production. This will re-establish Vietnam's and Bangladesh broken supply chains as well. Because if you talk about Vietnam and Bangladesh, large number of factories are actually owned by China. This is, something which is everybody is not really aware of. Vietnam, Cambodia, and Bangladesh, these three countries, there is a lot of ownership of the Chinese companies. In fact, China is there everywhere now, whether we talk about a laptop or a mobile. We can find Chinese investment in almost all the countries, including India. But since we are talking with respect to apparels only, Vietnam, Bangladesh, and even Cambodia for that matter, a lot of investment has been done by the Chinese entrepreneurs. So that will actually limit the damage to the Chinese entrepreneurs. In the second scenario, where India captures some of the share from China, it can only happen when Indian exporters focus immediately on synthetics, right? So we now have to shift gears, moving from cotton. Now we have to actually move on to synthetics very fast. The time is not enough to to actually relax and think about various strategies. We have to immediately change gears and move on to synthetic and woolens. So functional apparel, performance apparel, and outerwear apparels. So these are some of the areas where the government exporters would actually have to give more attention and improve their competitiveness in core categories where China may lower prices to retain share. So whatever basic categories we are exporting, we will continue to export that. But if China reduces its prices even more, right, India will have a tough time. And not only India, countries like Bangladesh, Vietnam, and Cambodia will also have tough time. So we need to be very, very watchful of how China is actually going to play his cards in the next 2-3 months. Now, these are some of the numbers. As we discussed, we are going to witness a 45% reduction in the European Union consumption of apparels, as well as 40% reduction in consumption in US markets, right? So now, how obviously, so that 40% or 45% apparel reduction in consumption will have impact across the border, across all the countries. It's not that only few countries are going to be impacted. Right. So these are some of the numbers which we are talking about for different scenarios. So you have the figures for 2019 here in the first column. Then we are discussing the scenario 1 where China, Italy, and Spain lose shares to Bangladesh, Vietnam, Poland, and Turkey. Sorry. So this is the first scenario in green. The second scenario is it also includes India. China, Italy, Spain lose share to Bangladesh, Turkey, Poland, Vietnam, and India. So in the second scenario, we are talking about the share coming to India also. And in the third scenario, we are talking about China maintaining the share. So if we look at scenario 3, it will be a same as scenario of 2019 in terms of market share. Now, please understand this slide very, in terms of market share, if you see 2019, we had 15% market share in EU. It will remain 15% if China is able to reduce its share prices and maintain the share. But in terms of value, ultimately it is the numbers of dollars, actually the money value, that is more important. So look at close to $30 billion they had exported. It will come down to $16.6 billion. But straight away 45 to 50%. Now, in case 45% is the overall average. So in some countries the impact will be more. In some countries the impact will be less. So similarly, we can see the red ones. I have highlighted China, Italy, and Spain in the red. So the impact will be more there than Bangladesh, Turkey, Poland, and Vietnam. No, they are actually the winners in these categories, and lastly we have India. So let us look at scenario 1 and scenario 2 more carefully. So how that is going to pan out. Now, say for example, no, we will not talk about other countries. Let me just focus on India. India exported about $5.6 billion worth of apparels to European Union in 2019, which was approximately 3% of the market share, as we saw in the previous slides also. Now, if India is not able to make any gains, this share is going to come down to 2%. Actually, India is going to lose, and the reduction will be close to 55%. These are all forecast. And in terms of value, from $5.6 billion, we are going to be selling anywhere between $2.5 billion, because the space vacated by China will be taken up by other countries. Now, if we talk about India also gaining something, I mean, scenario 2 is the most likely scenario, in my opinion, till March 2020. If Indian industry actually gears up and act smartly, we could be actually looking at scenario 2. So from 5.6, from a 3% market share, we can actually increase our market share by 1%. So, I mean, on paper, it looks very small, just an increase of 1% share. But when we talk in terms of money, it actually means a lot of money. We were talking about $800 billion industry. So, but now that industry is going to shrink. So from 5, even if we grow, we'll be selling only about $4 billion of worth of products to the European markets. Now, this is the scenario for the American markets. Again, look at the figures for the India. In 2019, we had a share of 5%, and the value terms we exported about $4 billion worth of products. Now, if we look at the scenario 2 again, we are talking about a 1% increase. So, in terms of value from $4 billion, we will be only selling about $3 billion. But in terms of percentage, it is increasing. So this is the contrast because of the overall reduction in the apparel consumption. Even though we are able to increase our market share in scenario 2, but in terms of real money value, we are actually going to export less. And that is true for all the countries. You look at figures of Vietnam, you look at figures of Bangladesh, from close to $6 billion, it will come to $4 billion. From Vietnam is doing almost $14 billion. Just look at the difference. Vietnam is such a small country and India is such a big country with large number of apparel manufacturing and vertically integrated and backward integration, forward integration, everything exists. But still, we are way, way behind Vietnam so far as US markets are concerned. Now, so this is basically a summary of Indian apparel exports in terms of percentages as well as in terms of value. So there are three big major segments now: EU, USA, and the third category is which basically comprises of all the other countries. So 2019 we exported 5.6 to EU, USA 4.06 again, right? And our market share was, I mean, this market share means if you calculate 5.6 with reference to total export of 16.25 to 34%, right? That means the total export, out of the total export, 34% export was happening to EU, 25% export is happening to USA, and 41% export is happening to all the other countries, right? So this, now with the expected reduction in market size by about 40% and 40%, we are looking at these numbers. So look at, I mean, from 16.25, let me just take a look at the total value. First of all, we are looking at, in the worst case situation, we are talking about just about $9 billion of export, right, which is minus 45% reduction. And in the best case scenario, where India is also able to make some gains, we are talking about export of about close to about $12.5 billion. So in terms of percentage, it is going to be, in the best case situation, the reduction will be approximately 25%, whereas in case of worst case scenario, we are looking at a reduction in exports to close to 45%. Now, specifically, these are some of the product categories where India can actually, because as an exporter, you actually need to understand this information very, very seriously. Which are the products, because India is not competitive everywhere. As I said, we are strong in cottons, right? And the season is going to change. So let us look at what are the product categories where chances of China losing the share are high. No, I have highlighted them. So it's cotton t-shirts, men's / boys cotton trousers, knitted jerseys, women / girls cotton trousers. So these are some of the product categories where chances of China losing the share is high. So we have to be looking at these categories. Do we stand a chance here? So again, if you see the potential gainers in this category, for each categories, there are potential gainers. So again, so far as India is concerned, we are looking at about 4 or 5 products where India can actually make good progress and increase its market share. So these products are basically your starting from top cotton t-shirts, then men's / boys cotton shirts, and then women / girls blouses made of man-made fibers, then women / girls dresses made of synthetic fibers again. So these are some of the product categories where the Indian exporter have to actually focus on, so far as European Union markets are concerned. Because if you see this, for 50% of the EU imports is concentrated in top 15 apparel categories. So the number of categories are huge. I've just taken the top categories where more than 50% of the export actually take place. And China is the largest supplier in 8 of them. So out of 15 categories, China is the leader in 8 of them. So it's a huge, it's not easy to displace China. I mean, there has been a lot of, what should I say, a lot of buzz about replacing China everywhere. But of course, it can happen, but it is going to take a lot of hard work by the government, by the industry, and everybody else. The same exercise is for the US market. 81% of the US imports is concentrated in top 20 apparel categories. So these are some of the categories, these are some of the numbers. Again, the same exercise I have done, where China has more chances of losing the share is again men's oblique knits shirts of made of cotton. So these are different categories. I mean, when we do international business, each category is designated a specific HSN code, which is called as harmonized system. So we need to really, I mean, I'll discuss that also in a couple of slides later. So we got to be, we go back, we need to go back to the drawing room and then start working again. Which are the areas, which are the products, which are the countries where we can really focus on and emerge as the gainers in those categories. So what are the focus areas for the, this is the last segment of my presentation. What are the focus areas for Indian textile and apparel industry? So basically we need to focus on 4 things. And these 4 things are consolidation in core categories. So wherever we are strong, consolidate those areas. Let others not get into this, right? Then second option is we need to diversify in terms of products, in terms of new product categories. Then third option is export market diversification. We need to look at new countries all the time. Government of India is also working very hard. Ministry of Textile is also working very hard. We are having bilateral trade agreements with various countries. So all those things are going to take fall in place sooner or later, right? And how much? So that is going to give us some kind of a boost in terms of identifying new markets, and then business consolidation with existing buyers. So like guys like H&M, Marks and Spencer, who are buying big from India, we need to actually talk to them, sit with them, and consolidate our business with them. So so far as consolidation part is concerned, so these are some of the categories where we have about 5% plus share, right? So if you see the last column, India's share in these categories, we have about 7%, 10%, as high as 14% market share, dresses of cotton, right? And the HS code is 606204442. So as a manufacturer, we really need to look at this table and see what are the products I can deliver, right? And obviously how it can happen, how you will be able to improve your market share. You have to basically again go back and see. There's a concept of what is called as smart factories now. There's a lot of technology advancement that is taking place in the apparel sector. We have countries where t-shirts are made by robots. Some of you might be surprised to know, robots are there in automobiles for long, but even for something as basic as a t-shirt, we have factories worldwide, especially in Europe, where we have robots making the t-shirts. We have companies who are making sewing machines which do not require tailors. The machines you program the machine, it will do the stitching automatically, right? So these are the kind of innovations and advancements that are taking place worldwide, and you cannot stand out actually. You have to be a part of these innovations. You have to be part of these manufacturing excellence, improve your productivity, improve your cost competitiveness. Then only you will be able to actually increase your share in these categories. So now when we talk about diversification, obviously it is not going to give you returns in a short while. No, when we diversify, the returns will start actually coming in medium terms. When we say medium terms, it may be 1 year, it may be 2 years, depending upon the category, depending upon the country you are exporting, right? So here we need to have a little bit of patience. Don't expect you pump in certain amount of money and from next month you will start getting returns. It is going to take some time but there is a lot of scope here. You see the market share, it is in almost these categories, the market share of India is less than 1%, 0.3, 0.7, 0.9. So there is plenty of potential. I mean, if you look at the global trade figures, say, right, no, say for example, I'll just take one pullovers of cotton, $23,864 billion is the global trade of this particular product itself. And we do just about $174 billion, right? So the market share is just about 0.7%. The third is your market diversification strategy. As I said, the government of India is working, the industry is working. We have trade associations that represent Indian garment industry worldwide in various forums, in exhibitions, seminars. So these are some of the countries where we can actually, have better partnerships or collaborations and look at increasing our shares. Just look at Japan, we just have 1% share. Look at Korea, we have 1% share. Russia 3%, Switzerland 4%. So these are some of the countries where we, with greater intense discussions and penetration of understanding of markets, we would be able to actually increase our share in these countries. And lastly is the consolidation part, which I said. Talk to the buyers from M&S, H&M, Zara. Zara is a big buyer from India, do a lot of sourcing. H&M do a lot of sourcing. So these are the buyers who are actually, going to help us because they have certain degree of faith on us. They have been doing business with India for so many years, so they have understanding of good markets, good rapport with the Indian exporters, good rapport with various agencies involved in the business. So there's always a chance that if they are looking to increase their sourcing, Indian garment exporters can actually talk to them and tap them to improve their position. So with this, I conclude my presentation, and back to Dr. Ekta.
Thank you very much, sir, for enlightening us with your perspective regarding the issues and highlighting the opportunities for Indian apparel industries. Sir, there are few questions raised from the participants during session, but very
Okay.
interestingly, you have already addressed some of the questions in your talk. We are
Okay.
very thankful to you, sir, for such an informative talk, and I am sure all the participants
I
have
can
been
still repeat the
deeply
questions. I
and
mean, I
greatly
can still
benefited.
clarify some of the questions. No issues.
So you have already addressed
Okay,
all
I've
those
already answered
questions.
them. Okay, fine, fine.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
It was my
So I'm
pleasure to
sure
be.
all the participants, thank you so much, sir. I'm sure all the participants have been deeply and greatly benefited by your ideas and your talk. Once again, thank you very much, sir, for being with us and sparing your time for benefiting all the participants joined us today. Thank you very much, sir.
My pleasure.
Moving to our second session, we are very delighted to have Dr. Gitika Jaspal with us today, who is joining us from United States of America. Dr. Jaiswal is presently working as Assistant Professor of Fashion Merchandising and Design in the Department of Family and Consumer Science at North Carolina Agriculture and Technology State University, Greensboro, USA. She has completed her PhD in Textiles and Apparel Management from the University of Missouri, USA. Dr. Jaiswal has almost 18 years of unique experience of teaching, research, extension, and administration in various institutes of high repute, like University of Missouri, Columbia, and Academia Sinica, Taiwan. She had also served as an assistant professor in the Department of Textiles and Apparel Designing, Ethleind College of Homes and SHUATS from 2003 to 2008. Her area of interest are global sourcing and supply chain management, visual merchandising, and consumer behavior. Dr. Jaiswal completed her doctorate of philosophy from University of Missouri, Columbia, USA, and her topic of research was power strategies and supplier, compliance and strategies, case of Indian apparel export firms. Dr. Jaiswal was recipient of UGC JRF for pursuing her master's in clothing and textile. She also received Missouri Joseph Fellowship in the year 2014 from International Textile and Apparel Association and Curators Grant in Aid Scholarship in 2016 awarded by University of Missouri, Columbia. Her achievements have been recognized and awarded by making her member of prestigious organizations like International Textiles and Apparel Association and American Association of Family and Consumer Sciences. She has a number of papers in reputed research journal to her credit. We invite you, Dr. Jaspal, to share your views and expertise on the topic, the new normal of fashion industry. We welcome you, Dr. Gitika. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Dr. Sharma, for introducing me. I really appreciate your kind words. I'm really excited to be a part of this webinar, and I would like to thank the organizing committee members for thinking about me and inviting me for this presentation. I'm really excited about this presentation, and I welcome all my audience here. And I truly enjoy Mr. Agrawal's presentation. I would like to congratulate him. And with this, without wasting much time, I would like to introduce today what I'm going to present in today's presentation. So I hope everyone is able to hear me clearly. I'm sorry, I forgot to ask about that. Okay, so today I'm going to present about the new normal of the fashion industry. Before I jump into my presentation, I would like to give you all an overview of what I'm going to talk in my presentation. So first of all, I would like to introduce you all to the structure of the textile and apparel industry. Then I'm going to talk about how the operations of the supply chain can get disrupted, and specifically talking in terms of the impact of COVID on the supply chain. And finally, I'll be discussing about how the new normal is going to look like. And my perspective is more from the developed countries perspective. And I think Mr. Agrawal, as I said, has already done a great job in talking about the Indian apparel industry and perspective of the developing country. So I hope you enjoy my presentation. All right, so the first, so here I would like to show you with this flowchart how the apparel industry really looked like. And I know that my audience is really diverse, so I think it's important for us to understand what are the major key players in the supply chain. So if you look at the supply chain members at the lowest level of the supply chain are the suppliers. We call them as the industry that are involved in producing the raw materials for producing textiles and garments. So this group of industry consists of like cotton farmers or the industries that are involved in the production of fibers. Then up in the supply chain, we have the suppliers, and these are actually the industry or the sector that is working for the production of textiles, meaning the fabric. And they are different, again, they perform different kind of operations like yarn spinning or weaving, knitting, finishing, dyeing, and printing, and so on. Then up in the supply chain, we have garment manufacturers, and this is where I think the role of developing countries really comes into play when we talk about global sourcing. So these are the industry that are involved in operations like cut, make, and trim, and they are producing garments, actual garments, and sending it out to the developed countries and making trade and benefiting both, I think, the developed as well as the developing economies. Then we have apparel intermediaries. These group of industry, it's more like a facilitator between the garment manufacturer and the retailer. So they're actually not producing any garment, but they are responsible for moving the goods from the developing countries to the developed nations. And it consists of companies like overseas buying houses, trading companies, and so on. Then we have the actual buyers or retailers, or when we talk about the different fashion brand, this is the group of sector that works for the actual distribution of fashion products to the consumers. And then ultimately the consumers, meaning us who are consuming and wearing these fashion products. So this is how our fashion supply chain looks like, and firms from all over the world come together to produce garments and bring it for the consumers. Now, looking at the structure, what you're seeing here, it looks pretty simple. However, if you dig deeper into the operations of individual players in the supply chain, it's not really simple. It's pretty complicated. And if you look at the global supply chain or the supply chain operations back 30 years ago, it was more simple because the production was consolidated into specific geographical locations, or we call it as apparel clusters. However, with globalization, with the advancement of information technology, communication, transportation, scenario has currently changed. And instead of companies sourcing domestically within a region or within country, it has started moving out. So these apparel clusters, they started dismantling, and the players started moving out of those apparel clusters, and that has given rise to global sourcing. And that is why I'm saying it's not simple, it's pretty complicated, and the operations of each member are connected. So if the operation of one member gets disconnected or affected by any means, it results in supply chain disruptions. Now, looking at the operations that are conducted by these players that I have shown you, this global trade or global sourcing has given rise to two big nations, like two big economies, like developing countries, which you are seeing here in the map, represented by green color, and the developed countries, which are in the pink in the map. So the entire world is now divided into two big nations, and these two economies are performing distinct functions. So looking at the distinct function, what we are seeing in this graph here is, if you look at the operations of the developed countries, they are more focused on research and development, design, marketing, post-sales, and retail services. However, if you look at the operations of the developing countries, as I said, they are more involved in producing the garment. So what these developed countries are doing, they are sourcing the production operations, cut, make, and trim operations from these developing countries. And this is because of the low availability of cheap labor force in these developing countries. Now, just imagine in United States, per hour wages for workers is $10. However, these companies, when they source from these developing countries, they end up paying workers $3 a day. And that is the margin these retailers are taking in producing by sourcing these products. So even these products move all over the world, they are still making a lot of money. And when the products come onto the retail stores, they almost have 50 to 60% of profit on each product. And that is the margin we are talking about right now. So economic value-wise, all the developed countries or these brands are involved in capital-intensive operations. However, the developing countries are more involved in labor-intensive operations. So because of the more power, and that was my research project when I did my PhD. So I looked at the amount of power these brands have, and so because of the amount of money and the kind of operations they have a say. They can control the operations within the supply chain. So if something happens in the developed countries, of course, it will have several spillover effects all across the world. And that is what we are experiencing right now. Now, as I said, that there are multiple players, and the operations of each player is connected. Say, for example, I'm a producer and I'm making a shirt. My operations will depend on sourcing fabric, on sourcing trims, buttons, and other raw materials that I use, right? And if one of the operation is stopped by any by any means, my operations are going to be affected, and then how I'm going to deliver my product to my ultimate consumer. So everything gets disrupted, and that is what happens when the supply chain disruption occur. By some means, the operation of one or the other supply chain members get affected, and that leads to the disruption of the supply chain. So in the past, we have experienced several disruptions in the textile and apparel supply chain. The disruption in the form of chemical technology. This was the time, like early 19th century, when synthetic fiber like rayons has been introduced. The way businesses used to operate was changed completely. Terrorist attack, 9/11. So because US is, as Mr. Agrawal already said, that US is a big market for several of these developing countries. So when terrorist attack 9/11 happened in US, they implemented several legislations like CTPAT, where these suppliers have to agree and sign by those CTPAT agreements in order to get in business contract with the suppliers. So whenever there are any kind of disruptions, some kind of legislations we have done, or sometimes many kinds of solutions have come up to counter to those disruptions. Factory fires, like in Bangladesh, Rana Plaza building collapse, that was a time when several of the brands demanded for corporate social responsibility. So it has been, it is not something new. Disruption is not something new. And I think we have always taken some lessons from these disruptions. So now what is happening is a natural disaster, and several natural disasters has happened, like tsunami and earthquake in Japan, hurricane in US, SARS in China, Ebola in Africa, and now what we are experiencing is COVID, which is all over the world. So before the outbreak of COVID-19, the life was pretty normal and easy, and we were taking a lot of things for granted. Like, for example, meeting friends and family members, traveling to places, but now with COVID-19, everything has stopped. So people are very much scared, nervous, and there's a lot of unpredictability. So this kind of disruption has never happened before. It is something that is very new. And that is why this pandemic is very different. It is different in terms of being global. So it is not just one country. It is not located to one geographical location. All of us are going through this COVID-19 at some point, or one earlier than the other. And then it is creating a spillover effect all through the world, and then it is destroying demands and supply as well. So this is not a very pleasant situation, and we have to find a way to come out of this situation. It is really widespread, as I said, and I just listed down all the industries that has been impacted by this pandemic. And I'm sure that there are some more industries that has not been listed out, but what I'm trying to pinpoint here is certain industries are more severely hit by COVID-19 than other industries. And why is that happening? It is because of the nature of the industries. Like here, hospitality and tourism is one industry that has been really hit hard by pandemic. And that is because if I don't go to hotel, or if I don't travel, I can still survive. So it is not something essential for me to live, right? And the similar is the case with the textile apparel industry. So fashion products is not essential. We can live our lives without fashion products, right? And that is what we are experiencing right now. People have cut down on buying garments or buying fashion products because they are non-essential in nature. And that's why there's a bigger impact on the textile and apparel industry. Also, this textile industry is very much fashion sensitive. If I, as a consumer, if I want to buy something for fall, and if I don't receive in the fall, I'm not going to buy that. So the inventory is going to sit with the retailers, and that is creating a problem right now for the retailers or the brands that are located in the US. So it's a very time sensitive industry. Now, excuse me. So now, looking at the impact of COVID-19, I think it's high time for all of us to not sit back and wait and watch. Rather, we need to identify the weak spots, and we have to bring solutions to these issues and trying to build the supply chain more strong and sustainable after this pandemic is over. And that is what we as academicians or as an industry people, we have to come together and start thinking and discussing about that. So in the past few months, we all are in the lockdown, and I have been pondering of some of the questions like how the dramatic shift in the global economy and consumer behavior will impact the fashion world after pandemic. What we can do to rewire or restructure the fashion system that has currently stopped to work. So these are two of the major questions that I have been researching, and I'm trying to find out some answers. Well, there's nothing right and wrong, but we have to have a dialogue in order to come up with certain solutions. And I'm going to talk a little bit more deeper on these two questions from the perspective of the developed countries. Now, this slide shows the trade data, and why I'm showing this these two graphs is just to show you the top 10 countries that are involved in exporting textiles and clothing across the world. So if you look at the market share, and I think Mr. Agrawal has pointed it out several times in his presentation, that China has the biggest share, and it's not only in clothing, it is both in both the areas, textiles as well as clothing. You can see here, China has the biggest share in the world trade market. So looking at this situation, so what I'm trying to say here is the China is the biggest player, and then we have these other countries that are also involved in this export and import business. So for example, I am a producer of an apparel. I'm a supplier and I'm producing some apparel. Say I'm from Bangladesh, and I am sourcing my goods for certain brand. I'm making my goods for a certain brand, and I have to source my raw materials. So for making any cloth, you need textiles. So what's happening is these suppliers, which are located in other developing countries, they are sourcing 40 to 50% of their raw materials from China, and that is where the problem has started. So we know that China is the biggest player, and as COVID hit China first, there is a sharp decline in the global trade volume, as much as 32% right now. So that was a sharp decline in the global trade volume. And I would like to give you a little bit of in how these different phases, how this COVID has impacted developing nations in different phases. So it started all from China, which was close to December 2019, and that was the crisis phase one, when everybody started having the crisis for raw materials. So because the China was hit, the factories were shut down, so many of the suppliers that are located in other developing countries, they were not able to source any product from China. So what happened, the production at those like Bangladesh, that got slowed down. And when they started to source their raw materials from other countries instead of China, what they found is either they were not able to find the right quality, or they were finding the material at a much higher prices. So that affected those suppliers at that point in December. So what happened, so these suppliers were not able to deliver the goods to the brands on time, and these brands started penalizing these suppliers which are located in Bangladesh. So this is what happened during the crisis phase one in December 2019. Then as virus started spreading to other different nations, there comes the crisis phase two, when it was realized most of the suppliers started experiencing delayed payments, which was more close to January and February. So because these suppliers, these buyers are not receiving their products on time, they were upset and they were not ready to make their payments. And several of the suppliers, especially those were small businesses, they were not able to sustain that delay in the payment, and many of them started being shut down. And that is what happened during the second phase. Then the third phase, the crisis, was the cancellation of orders that were already in progress. So what happened is, which was in March, and that was the time when these developing countries like United States started getting into lockdown. Of course, in US was a partial lockdown, but many of the retailers, the big brands, were shut down totally, and they were not open in many of the major cities. So they, of course, started experiencing the drop in the sales. So they started canceling their orders, and they did not cancel just their orders that were assigned for future, but they started canceling the orders that was in process. So many of the suppliers were in the mid of producing those apparels or fashion products, and these buyers said, okay, we do not want that product. Now they used a clause, I was not aware of that before, but they used a clause, force majeure clause, for taking a responsible exit and exiting their contracts without having any liabilities. So that helped them to just go out and not take any responsibility towards their supplier, which I think was a very unfair act. And in United States, we have the Workers' Rights Consortium has developed a COVID tracker, which is an interesting website. If you have time, please go through this link. What they are doing is they have listed all the different brands, and they have listed like the buyers that were responsible versus buyers that were not responsible to the suppliers. And I think which is a very good initiative because that was pressurizing these brands not to cancel their orders, and also making the consumers aware what these brands are doing. So this is what exactly happened when this COVID started spreading to all different nations. And if you look at the impact of orders that started canceling, and the current scenario is as close as 31% in decline in canceling the orders. So this is what happened with the impact of COVID. Now, let's talk about what happened on the developed nation side, meaning the buyers or the retailers or brand side. So as I said, in March, the lockdown was announced. So there was a hard blow on the demand. The consumption came to a freeze, and almost there was a reduction in 30% reduction in the consumption of fashion product, which was really big for the retailers. People stopped going to the stores. The retail sales dropped significantly, and this pressured the retailers to cancel their orders with the suppliers. There's a widespread store closures, and the GDP of US starts declining. It is predicted that by the end of 2020, the GDP of US might go down as much as 4 to 6%, which is a big amount. And what several of the revenue of the several stores started to shrink, and it is predicted that by 2020, 27 to 30% of the revenue are going to shrink. Several of the fashion companies, almost more than 50% of the companies are started to file bankruptcy. And these are some of the companies that you're seeing here: J. Crew, Neiman Marcus, J.C. Penney, True Religion. These are the companies that has already, I think in April, by the end of April, they filed for bankruptcy. So just imagine these department stores, they cannot even stand 1 month of lockdown. That was the situation. And I was surprised to see Neiman Marcus because it is one of the luxury brands in US, and they have filed for bankruptcy. So this was a situation in US during the lockdown in here. Looking at the consumer's response, we all, during the lockdown, we were asked to quarantine ourselves follow social distancing. And that led to the development of desynchronized society, meaning we all were living our lives separately, and but at the same time, we are all doing our activities. So the society is developing more parallel versus being more developing like a network. And that is what we call it as a desynchronized society. And that is what is happening. People have fear, they are isolated, depressed, anxious about what's going to happen in future. There's a lot of financial uncertainty because several of the people have lost their jobs. So there's a sharp decline in the discretionary income of the consumers. So if there is a decrease in the discretionary income, it is very likely that the people are going to go and buy the basic products versus going and buying the luxury products. There was a freeze on spending, so people are highly price sensitive, and they are, instead of going to the luxury stores, they are going and shopping at the discount stores. They are going and shopping at the secondhand store and trying to save money for future. With the social distancing and quarantine situation, there was a demand for the retailers to develop new platform for distribute the products instead of developing or doing anything in the brick and mortar stores. It was more online sales. And I have seen in US, Amazon is taking all other businesses out. It has entirely captured the market. And during the lockdown, it was only Amazon that was working all through these previous months. I have also observed the stockpiling behavior, and I think probably that is because the consumers were very much fearsome about what's going to happen in future. So everybody started going and buying all the essential items and start storing, and I think that led to the shortage of toilet papers, hand sanitizers. So I think that is these are the different, very different kind of behavior from the consumers that the market has not seen that before. So looking at that behavior during the pandemic, WGSN has predicted that in the coming future, what we are saying as a new normal, we are going to get three different kind of consumer groups. One is the stabilizers, and these are the people or the group of consumers who will look for simplicity, radical acceptance. They will go and buy products that will make them happy and calm versus going and buying fashion items. So retailers have to think about this group of consumers and then channel it into products. And then there's another group of consumers are the settlers who are actually trying to prioritize and balance the economy, environment, and humanity. So they're trying to balance the 3 Ps: people, planet, and plan. So these kind of consumers are expected to go and shop from the archival collections, or they're going to shop from the discount stores, or they're going to shop from the secondhand stores, versus if the retailers are trying to offer discount, they're not going to buy it because that's not their priority. So I think people are getting more conscious, and they are becoming more picky in their consumption in future. Then the last group is the new optimist, and I think this is the generation Z and Y because they are young, they are more adventurous, so they will go for experimenting all these designs. However, the market for the new optimistics are going to be small in comparison to the stabilizer and the settlers. So this is what is going to be new normal that retailers have to prepare in future. Now, what lessons we have learned from this pandemic as a textile and apparel retail industry? And this is more focused on the US market side. So we have learned that there is a need to develop agile and resilient supply chain. Now, what does that mean? It means that the US brands have to find suppliers beyond China. What Mr. Agrawal said, that they might move some of the product from China, but still, I think they're really far from moving completely out of China. I'm not seeing it in the coming 10 years. And so part of this, can these buyers or brands are going to move from China, but not completely. So, but there is a need that these brands start thinking about finding new sourcing destinations in order to absorb these kind of shocks and bear with these high risk. Now, there's also a lot of buzz about nearshoring and offshoring. So nearshoring is something when you cut down the supply chain or make the supply chain shorter. So instead of going and sourcing from Bangladesh or Vietnam, Cambodia, India, they are trying to find sourcing destinations which are closer to United States, say South America, Mexico, Guatemala, Haiti. So these are some of the countries that now these retailers are talking about to move their sourcing destinations. On the onshoring, this onshoring was not new because during the Trump, since President Trump has been in the administration, he's focusing more on bringing the manufacturing back to United States. However, that's not happening for sure. Another thing that has been realized with this pandemic is there's a need for these apparel brands and retailers to build a strong and stable relationship with their buyers. What we have seen previously, even when I remember the Rana Plaza building collapse, when that was happening in Bangladesh, several of the retailers, they just moved out without helping them. They canceled their orders and they didn't continue their sourcing from Bangladesh. And I think that's not the solution. The solution is that these brands have to work with these buyers, helping them to get out of these situations like pandemic. And that will ultimately help in building the supply chain more stronger. And that will also help the buyers in their long-term, in building a sustainable relationship in the long term. The other thing that's important and that we have learned from this is sustainability first. So there is a need for the retailers to bring new models of consumption. Nowadays, retailers are talking about seasonless designs, which I think sounds really interesting. Seasonless designs, probably something that is more classy. Maybe we are going back to the classic fashion we are talking about. And I think that's going to be more sustainable if the retailers are trying to bring designs that are not peculiar to any specific fashion seasons. Then, of course, the emphasis on corporate social responsibility is important because the new generation, especially the generation Z and Y, they are very conscious about what's happening around the world. They are very conscious about equality, harassment, discrimination. So they want to hear from the retailers that they are working to reduce those issues within the supply chain. So they're trying to look for the ways these businesses can balance the economic, social, as well as the environmental functions. Some other lessons from this pandemic is restructuring the retail industry. Now, one thing that I find it interesting is here in United States, they have really big format retail stores located under shopping malls. And what I'm observing now is majority of the retailers, they are trying to come up with small format stores. And I think this is also because of the quarantine and social distancing. So instead of having those centralized big format retail stores, they are breaking that into a small format stores and taking those stores to the neighborhood or the community areas so that people have a greater access and people do not have to spend more time within those stores and they can shop and come back quickly. They're also working on several kinds of technology like employing robots, several kind of other devices, technology solutions have been developed so that people has to really come in minimum contact with each other, but at the same time can have a good shopping experience. So consumers are going to be at the core of the retailer strategy. So they have to devise strategies that are consumer-centric rather than making profit. Also, the consumers are expecting these retailers to not just make money. They want these retailers and brands to return to the community in terms of helping their suppliers or in terms of working within the community to improve people's lives. And that is what is going to be the new role of the retailers. Also, there is an emphasis on inventory buffering. So what right now with the fast fashion, what was happening was the lean manufacturing and just-in-time delivery. And I think that has to go down. If there is a buffer with the retailers, I think these kind of shocks and risks can be more easily absorbed versus lean manufacturing technology. So that is what is recommended for them to reduce lean manufacturing. Inclusive culture, of course, that is important also with the agitation on Black Lives Matter that is recently going on in United States. I think a lot of people are talking about inclusiveness, diversity, being equal. So I think that that's going to be the trend for the retailers in future. And they have to find strategies that make consumers feel that they are included and they have a diverse variety of products. The other thing that's important is digital recalibration, and that is because of social distancing and quarantine. We don't know how long we are going to be in quarantine. So it's important that these retailers, instead of just focusing on the brick or mortar stores, they go and find other like omni-channel distribution platforms that can help consumers to have more confidence and go back and be loyal to those brands. Also, the social platforms, and I think like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, this is all old, and the generation here, people here, they're not looking at those promotional ads through those social platforms. They're looking for something more interesting, something more attractive and beyond those social traditional platforms. So these retailers have to think about like TikTok videos. Those are, I think, probably more interesting, and it will bring more consumers to them. Then material revolution, and I think that's very important because we are talking about health. People are conscious about health. They are looking for simplicity. They are looking for something that goes back to the nature. So there's a need, instead of just going back behind looking for synthetic fibers, there's a need that they bring in that revolution, bring something more organic, something more that can be appreciated by these consumers. In addition to that, it is also important that these retailers can expand their line of product. So instead of like what Gucci is doing recently, they are, instead of just getting involved in, like they stopped these fashion production and they started getting involved in producing surgical masks and other medical PPEs for the consumer. So I think if the retailers try to expand their market, their material and product line, probably they will find the new normal more promising, and they will be better able to cope up with these strategies. I would like to show some of the pictures to just show you how the future, the new normal is going to look like. So I'm still seeing myself wearing a face mask for the coming 2021, or wearing like protective gear, especially when I'm going to class and teaching. I do not want to get infected, and that is what people are going to look into, looking at the materials that can help them to protect or keep them healthy and safe. Then loungewear, I think that's going to be in trend for another year, because still a lot of people are stuck in home, they are working from home, so there's a huge demand right now. Whenever I go to Costco now, I don't find formal dress shirts and pants anymore in the stores. I'm finding more of these loungewear sets in the stores, and that is what I've experienced myself. Then sloppy chic and seasonal designs, and I think that's an interesting picture that I found here. the Zoom ready button down dress. So I do a lot of that as well. Whenever I have a meeting, I just wear my shirt, and no matter if I'm wearing my pajamas underneath, I just wear. So now people are looking for something very convenient and quick to put on so that they can be on the meetings, or they can just be online with people or groups. Vibrant colors are going to be in trend because people have gone through that depression and isolation and fear. And I think color is something that helps people to calm down. So they will look for vibrant colors in their designs. I've already talked about the small retail format stores. And as you can see here, the Walmart has several of the neighborhood market, and Target is recently working on the new format, smaller format stores. Material revolution is important, and I think CRM has done a wonderful job by bringing this anti-corona fabric. I'm just curious to know that how it's going to be. And I know there are several like self-cleaning nanotechnology treated fabrics where it can just by itself get rid of the germs that you have. So those kind of materials will be in demand. People will look for healthy, something that they can carry all over. Innovative social media platform, as I said, that not just the traditional social platforms, we are looking for something new in US. Rise in technology and solutions like this virtual mirror, and I think it has already been in stores, but not everywhere. So I think this is going to be the trend where people has to come very less in contact with the sales associates or people in the stores, and they just can navigate by themselves. Like here, a shopping cart with a LCD display and a scanner. So I think this is what I'm seeing in the new normal in the retail stores. Omni-channel experience, yes, because of the social distancing and quarantine that can be continued for another 2 months. Easy to wear shoes. And I think this was interesting. I was trying to find shoes for my kids, and I found that I was just reading some like recommendations, what is important. And they say that keep shoes simple so that you don't really have to touch your shoes, something that's really simple and you can just easily wear without getting much of the infection. So I think that those are some cool things which are going to be in the trend. Sustainability, we have talked about already, 100% organic cotton or any other materials, flax, hemp. I think these, especially India, has a very good, they have a very good bank of natural resources. And I think this is where I see India catching up with the market. And I think if being innovative in the textile materials could help India market to get a grasp in the export. Demand for local products is gonna be higher in the new normal. So that's all. With this, I conclude my presentation, and I would be happy to answer your questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Jaspal, for wonderful presentation and very informative talk, especially putting emphasis on the challenges of fashion and retail industries in global perspective during this pandemic and focusing on the possible solutions to overcome these problems. I'm sure the participants must have had an enriching session by gaining a global insight into the fashion industry. Thank you, Dr. Jaspal.
I wish. Thank you very much.
Now we will move forward with our last session, and for that we are very delighted to have Mr. Georgie Sunny with us. Mr. Sunny, an academician as well as fashion designer, is presently working as assistant professor, Vellore Institute of Technology, Chennai. Georgie Sunny holds Masters in Apparel Design from National Institute of Design, Ahmedabad, and did his BTech in Fashion Technology from Kumar Guru College of Technology, Coimbatore. Mr. Sunny has worked with eminent fashion houses like Shamal and Bhumika, Gujarat, and Mono Viraj, Kochar, Bangalore. He also worked as a costume designer for the world-famous gaming company Ubisoft, and also worked for prestigious brands such as Alan Solly, Madura Fashion, and Lifestyles, and Peter England. He is a fashion designer come fashion technologist, and his area of expertise are fashion illustration, portfolio making, design process, apparel and textile design, fashion history, and trend research. Mr. Sunny is also the winner of Fashion Show IM and IIT Gujarat, in 2013 and 2015, and Max Design Families for 2014 ELLE India. Now, I would like to invite Mr. Georgie Sunny for his talk on impact of COVID-19 in high fashion trend forecasting insight. Welcome, Mr. Georgie Sunny. Over to you, sir.
Thank you so much for the amazing introduction, ma'am. Thank you so much. So, guys, I'm going to talk to you more about how is the trend patterns are going to shift because of COVID-19 and how it's going to affect the high fashion industry. You know, like the biggest brands like Christian Dior, Versace, all the bigger brands, how it's going to affect, and what kind of thought process designers will be taking, what kind of inspirations designers will be going to take, and how the entire shift of art and fashion going to be completely changed. So I'm going to tell you, like, I'm not going to take anything from any forecasting agencies or like WGSM or any forecasting agencies. I'm going to show you like some of the works which I have done with my students. So I am basically a professor from Vellore Institute of Technology. I was doing my doctorate also in the same place. So I go as like guest faculties for other schools also, like other design schools also. So there's one design school in Kerala called Kerala Institute of Design. So this project I have especially done with this final year students of KSID. Okay, so in this you will be able to understand like how is the entire process of trend forecasting we do, and this is especially done in the COVID time, so you can able to understand what kind of trend directions students have identified from the existing scenario. So I'll show some of my student works, and then at the end of the session, I'm going to give you some outlines about how is the shift happening in the market segment, like how the big brands are changing, how fashion shows are transforming, and all that. So I'm going to share my screen. Okay, I hope my screen is visible. Is my screen is visible? Is my screen visible? Can anyone give a response?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, okay, perfect. So actually the trend forecasting is how we actually do the trend forecasting is like as a student, you need to understand like what is happening in the world in terms of technology, agriculture, in terms of what kind of movies are coming in, how the thought process of people are happening, what kinds of product people are really looking for. So all this direction, all these things are really interconnected. It's not like fashion is an isolated thing which is just standing apart. So what is happening in technology, what's happening in automobile design, what is happening in what kind of movies are coming out, what kinds of games people are playing, all these things are really connected. So the entire process actually start with understanding all the emerging new stuffs happening in all the different streams. So the students have done their basic research related to all the different streams. You can see like in technology, everybody is connected with, if people are very isolated in different places, but still they are connected. Work from home is one key thing which is happening. And if you move to art and craft, you can see this influence of mask even in mural paintings, and even in local craft, people also start working things which is related to starting the craft on a mask, start painting and all that. So all those patterns you can see like how it is happening. And many of the artists have started working with the COVID-19 depiction on their traditional craft and all that. So that kind of a shift is happening. And you know that in social media like Instagram, and there's a lot of pictures coming up of wearing very fancy and funky masks. So similarly, the student have understand what is happening exactly in the agriculture segment, what kind of directions it's going. So from the entire research of, then again, when you come to politics, what kind of stuffs are happening in politics, what kind of food items are people are really interested in now. You can see like because people are quarantine and people are in their own house, it's more kind of traditional cuisines. They are start making a lot of bakings happening. People are like more interested to understand their roots, and people are like more interested to make the very authentic food what belong to their cultures. Earlier, the trends were like people are more into fusion kinds of food, like Indochina, like a lot of fusion foods were there. Now people are really thinking about very authentic, very traditional kinds of food people are much interested in. So those kinds of directions are coming in food industry. And you can see if you see the nature is like taking a break and it's slowly actually healing by its own. You know that the news is coming, like ozone layer is healing by its own. People from like the people started moving out of the town to villages. Villages, that is a huge trend happening. And another thing, like once the human interaction get reduced to the nature, you can see a lot of wild animals coming. You have seen the news like dolphins coming back, birds coming back, so many things happening like that in the perspective of nature. And see, there are some of the visuals and some of the key things which is happening. You can able to understand like how swans were coming back and all that. And this is related to nature. And see, this another huge trend of like work from home is happening, and everybody thinking about YouTube channels, plus starting a lot of YouTube channels and related to so many things. Like, so that is another huge pattern. And again, like how lockdown have affected different lifestyle creation, like the rich have a certain kind of like they're more into doing a lot of exercise and all that. So that kind of a pattern also is there. And you know that the lockdown has really created a really tough time for the poor and the people the tough people and all that. They were just traveling from miles and miles. So that is another thing happening. And then is the main thing when you see the movie and the entertainment industry, you can see that a lot of old serials are coming back. The people are more interested in the old movies. They're seeing the serials which is like 10 or 5 years old. They're still seeing it, like those kind of, even the channels started showing that kinds of series, like for example Ramayanam start coming back. That is a huge shift happening in that. So okay, so from all these key things from different streams, actually the students were derived some key concepts. Like when you design any high fashion collection, it's basically you need a concept to start with. From the concept you will be driving your inspiration boards, you will be driving color boards. You're going to tell that what kinds of materials are going to come. All the direction will be coming from your concept. So where your concept is coming from? Your concept is actually coming from your trend research. This is how all high fashion brands will work. It's not like they just directly take anything as an inspiration and work. Their inspirations will be connected with the trend directions, what people are really thinking of. So I'm going to explain you in detail what kinds of concepts are really coming up. One main concept and one main trend identified is like everybody is very isolated, but still we are all connected. So this is a very good example like what we are doing. We are all in very different place right now. I'm in Kerala, you guys are in different part of the country and even different part of the world, like different countries, but still we are all connected in the one single platform. Okay, so this is one huge trend. This concept can lead to different directions. Even in fashion, this has reflected a lot of ideas and concept to derive from this particular trend. And another main trend you can identify is like nature is healing by its own. So you can see in the coming season there will be a lot of animal prints and floral prints, and the healing of nature will be depicted in different forms by the designers. So that is a definite huge trend which you can see in the upcoming seasons. With any high fashion designers, you can see these reflections. And it's a time of technology. You know that it's time of technology. Most of the staff things are working, businesses and everything, even education, have a huge shift because of technology. So this trend is going to be a massive thing in all the different streams. And the last main trend is like what the student is identified is like the traditional is the new normal. Okay, so that means like the traditional elements and the traditional things are values. People will start respect craft. People will start think about the value of tradition and the power of like going back to their roots. So that is a key trend. Like you can see from the concept board, you have depicted the cereals and the kinds of food items people are really interested during lockdown and all that. Like everybody is thinking about homely food, healthy food. People are thinking about having their own vegetable gardens and all that. So all these things have going to be reflected in fashion also. You can see a lot of prints of like floral and vegetable stuffs on the fabric. And you can also see that designers will be inspired from very authentic traditional form of arts. And they might be even inspired from different type of costumes of traditional times. So all this will be going to get influenced by the designers to creating high fashion garments. So I'll show you in more detail like how the entire process of designing high fashion garments. So the student actually take one main concept is like traditional new normal, and she have done her market research, and then she have come up with some of the key insight in whom she is designing for and all that. So based on that data and the concept what she have taken, she actually decided to design something very very much connected with traditions and the demand of the markets. The bridal will have a lot of demand, like people will be going to have a very smaller groups and then they'll be doing their wedding. It won't be like you're going to invite a lot of people and is and celebrating the wedding. It's not like only the intimate friends and close families going to happen the wedding. So that kinds of direction she actually derived from her market research. So her client it's like how the kind of wedding she is actually planning. So an Indian woman will be really like to dress up in a very traditional form, but have a very modern contemporary twist in it. So that kind of client she is actually visualizing. And you can see like, so she actually now narrow it down to her inspiration. So the concept was like tradition is the new normal. So from tradition, there's so many things which is connected with tradition. So she actually have taken an inspiration from a folk dance form of South India that is called Kathakali. So she is actually very much interested to take an inspiration from the very traditional form of Kathakali. Like the Kathakali, you know, that's a very famous dance form. But by the ages, the costumes of the Kathakali also started changing massively. Like it's lost its authentic form, and a lot of other things started coming in. So how her trend forecasting and the inspiration is connecting is like she's really thinking about how the Kathakali form was in the traditional times, how the silhouettes were there, what kind of natural colors they will be using as pigments for doing their makeup, and what kind of jewelry were there, how was the exact forms were there, how was the shapes were there. All that things she is actually taking. And then from there really her your inspiration is coming from. So I will show you like how she have derived them. So this is the some research she have done based on the traditional costumes of Kathakali, and then she have actually done her inspiration taking like the color swatches and the colors which is actually the authentic Kathakali costume and the makeup. So if you see the Kathakali makeup, there is like a lot of pigments they will be using, a lot of materials which is like very natural in color and textures. So those colors are really they are taking to derive their boards. I'm sorry. So this is the color story she is actually derived. That is, this is the forecast color she is telling. She's telling like she's actually derived actually from the Kathakali costume, which is the authentic traditional Kathakali costume. And these are all the different color shades she actually derived. if you any forecast agencies, they predict colors in this particular form. So you will be having colors which is like darks, grays, pastels, and bright. So the what is the idea behind selecting this much sets of colors is like you won't be losing any clients. Sometimes the clients will come like even be needing a pastel shades, or the other ways they'll be telling like they'll be needing a dark and bright colors like that they will be telling. So you won't be losing set of clients. That's the main idea. So this is from entire set of colors what she have developed. She have actually picked few colors which really work for their storyline. Okay, so these are the main colors she's actually picked for the storyline. Still keeping in mind that the main trend of the traditional is new normal. From that she have taken very authentic traditional colors of Kathakali. That's how she's connecting it. So this is a mood board. It really shows what is the kind of feel the entire garment is going to tell. In some operations, like how she actually deriving the texture and actually deriving the forms and shapes and all that, we can have some idea. Like everything is like taken from the Kathakali costume, like the shapes and the motifs. This can be even put in embroideries or prints or any directions which you want. This is all the prints she have. Same motif, she have repeated and twisted and created amazing patterns using this. In this the same motif, again, and it would be like the big, really small motifs. And these are the embroidery techniques, how she is connecting it with Kathakali and then some traditional forms. And she is actually exploring with different textures and fabrics direction the feel of Kathakali and the traditional drape forms to depict in a contemporary way. This is some of the rough sketches, like how the traditional form she can take and make it into more contemporary way, like how the silhouette can be twisted and make it very wearable for the current market. Okay, you can't really take the direct silhouette of the really make very contemporary, which is really fit for the modern women to wear it. So that is the main idea. So you can see the final 9 looks what she's designed. So when you design this final 9 collections, it's depending on high fashions. It's vary from designers. Some designers make very smaller pack of look. Like for example, the garments will be like looks in one show, or the other will be working with maybe 60 looks for. I mean, one look means like one full ensemble. Okay, one looks for like model looks for one show. It's depending on the designer completely. But as a student, you need to remember always like how you can give more variation to the client in terms of longer and shorter garments. And there should be like, if it is an Indian collection, like how she is designed, there should be like lehengas, there should be like kameez and sarees and shapes and all that. So a lot of variety should be there for the client to pick any of the pieces. So these are her rough sketches. Like you can see that she have done a lot of sketches, and from that she is actually picking up the best working shapes and silhouette with respect to the trend forecasting what she have done, and with respect to the market research what she have done. So it should actually sellable also. It should be like a very new creative concept and idea also. So this is the final look. Like we all know that the whole shift, this is definitely going to reflect in the high fashion also. So very avant-garde kind of mask will definitely come. If you see the recent collection of Rahul Mishra, you can see this massive butterflies flying around kind of mask. So in high fashion, that is definitely going to be a main thing. Like different fantasy masks are going to come, like different kind of materials. strange kind of embroideries and all that will be there. And very dramatic kinds of masks will be there in high fashion. It won't be like a ready-to-wear normal day wearing mask. It is going to be like very fancy kinds of masks which you can see. Still, that kind of trend is widely shown in Instagram and Pinterest and all that. Like a lot of celebrities and bloggers, very like about the garment I'm done with embroideries and all that. The same kind of thing is going to come for the mask also. You will be getting very luxury mask with precious stones and semi-precious stones and all that. So that is a huge and it's going to happen. So for the student direction, so once you can actually sketch your front and back of the high fashion garment with the matching mask. So that is a must for high fashion in the time which we are living in. So this is how the student is depicting. You can, even if you are seeing this sari, like it's not a very traditional sari. It has the flavor and it's like depicting a woman like very modern contemporary women, like, and the mask is really a lot of drama. That is one main key directions for the coming seasons. Tech pack, like like what is a tech pack and all that. The base and all the other details be given on the garment. Give like more idea about how the cuts and how the shape, what kind of fabrics and all going to be coming. This is some more directions on the similar line. So I hope you understand one of the main trend is like traditional designers are going to look back to their archives and identify what is their authentic identity of the brand. Those kinds of directions are really going to come. If you see any brands, they're definitely checking out their archives and going to traditional things what skills they had into a very contemporary form. That's how the direction is going to be. I'm going to one other student project also. So in that you will be able to understand some other directions. Okay. Then there is a huge increase for the like using and giving something back to the nature. That is a huge trend which you're going to see for the high fashion system in the coming seasons. That means the designers will be definitely going to work with like how you can reuse those things. When you are made a plastic, which is very difficult to degrade and take ages to degrade. So how you can extend the life of the same product you have created. So they will be definitely working on embroideries and different textures in plastic, molding it and cutting it, and so many different ideas and techniques going to become with the existing materials. So some of the explorations in the student level, but this trend directions will be definitely you can see in the upcoming bigger brands. Like I'm not talking about ready-to-wear brands, I'm talking about the high-end couture brands. You can see like different textures or different materials which they actually created from the waste materials, reusable materials, and just make it more sustainable. So sustainability is one of the key other trends which we're going to see it in the high fashion. People are more talking about sustainability, but now it's time for the action. See the Indian brands, like the bigger Indian couture houses and all, everybody start thinking about how you can be convert the same lehenga into different styles, so that the product life cycle will be again increased. So all those reflections will definitely going to happen in the industry. And you can see like some what direction the student is actually taken this trend. You can see it's very organic forms, but it's very contemporary and very modern silhouettes. So she is thinking about reusing the plastic, cutting and molding the plastics in different forms, using different kinds of materials and reusing it and creating some interesting textures. So this is another main trend. And so another trend which is very much seen in high fashion is like there is an always designers taking inspirations from a blend of reality and fantasy. So if you can see like the how much ever the harsh situation is like if you're going to be like quarantined, people will be isolated, people will be depressed and all that. So that part is there. So but you have this buyer behaviors will be more in terms of buying more colorful materials, funky stuff. So those kinds of product will be selling. So this is going to be the shift which people will be having. It's a mix of reality and fantasy. If you see like, for example, the Dior haute couture collection, this season they have actually created a very beautiful fashion film in this same storytelling, like it's a mixture of fantasy reality. Like you can see, I will actually play that video, so it will be a little more interesting to have a idea like what I'm talking about. So in this fashion film, they are actually showing the garments to be like really a small piece of like something which you design for a doll. Then the garments will be like that, and this piece is actually sent to the client, and then if the client like it, then they will be making it into the real couture piece. See, this is actually this pattern is actually connected with the traditional new normal pattern also. Like this doll making kind of garments, actually they were practicing it many years before in their design house. So that idea was again they are using it for the current drying molds. So that is the thing, like whatever strong identity the fashion houses had, they are definitely going to bring those things back with a modern shift. So this is definitely going to happen in the high fashion. So I'll just play this video so you will get an idea like what direction I'm talking about. The same thing I was telling you, like the garments are going to be like a lot more miniature kind of pieces, which will be added to the client. But we're going to depicting the same idea in a very fantasy mode of fashion. But this is the way they send products to the client. They're going to be making miniature of the garments, the high fashion pieces, and then that will be sent to the clients. And if the client like it, then that will be made in the client's particular shape and fit. because of time, I'm just running the video a little bit. This fashion film is more like a very fantasy way of storytelling, but with reality and fantasy, it's a mix. Show you the last part. So whatever pieces the client is really interested, those pieces will be made into real size, and that will be given to the client. You can see this how they have depicted till the client is really wearing the garment. So this is one main direction which you can see, like most high fashion brands shifting towards fashion films. So fashion shows, the possibilities of fashion shows will be like really low. Like you can invite only very less people for the fashion show. So definitely the fashion houses need to make a lot of fashion films to showcase their garments to the outside world. So there's a huge possibilities of creating high budget fashion films for the coming seasons to show the garment. So you can really see the movement, and you can really, storytelling has a lot more power in the coming seasons. You can see that all brands will be more focusing on how authentic and how pure the story of making the garment is, and how the storytelling and fashion is connected. All those directions will be going to have a massive comeback in the coming seasons. So fashion shows will be very less, and it will be more about fashion films to show the garments for the buyers to buy the garment. And another main thing I need to talk about in high fashion is like about an Indian brand called Rahul Mishra. You can see his idea of like how to nourish the craft. Like his all concept for the season is like he's actually thinking, telling like craft people are like butterflies. They need some flowers or a garden. So as a designer, it's our role to create that platform for artisans to work. Then only they can show their talent. As a designer, you should think about products which has a lot of possibilities of craft and craftsmanship. Then only the craft people can show their talent on the garment. So that was the concept. It's a very brilliant concept, like how designer and craft people should go hand in hand to create fabulous pieces. I'm just showing a glimpse of his collection so you can get some idea. So this is a final, this is the whole story. You can see it individually in your YouTube. I'm just giving you some directions, what kind of way the trends are going to be. So government's going to be having elaborate masks, a lot of embroideries, and but people are going to be buy very less. So the high fashion is going to be like, you need to have a very strong story to sell your piece. Then only the government will really sell. Otherwise, the government won't sell. Like it's no more like fast fashion or anything going to work. People are more thinking about very authentic products which has a story associated with it. Then they can buy it and then they can pass it to generations. So that is the main idea of kind of couture which is going to be coming for the coming seasons. So I am just so I'll just conclude whatever I was telling. So the main key trends which you're going to see for the coming seasons will be like, one is like going back to the nature. People are more thinking about sustainability. That aspect will be really going to kick all the different streams of fashion. It will be definitely reflecting like in ready to wear also. It's going to be reflecting in high fashion also. And people are going to be more get inspired, like designers are going to be more get inspired from nature, healing of the nature, and those will be a main key directions. And another main direction will be like traditional elements, and the traditional identities of each fashion house is going to be more visible, and people are going to more talk about craft and art and all that. And another main thing is like being buying very less, buying products which has more story associated, buying which has more value associated, and passing the same couture pieces to generations. Those are the key main trends which is going to coming up for the coming seasons. That's it. Thank you so much, guys. If you have any queries, you can ask me.
Thank you, Mr. Georgie Sunny, for such an expressive presentation and sharing your gainful views with all of us. It was indeed a pleasure hearing to your perspective upon fashion trends and forecasting. I'm sure that the knowledge gained by your expertise will help the participants from varied backgrounds. We thank you, sir, for joining us for this webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Now, I will request Engineer John Wesley, Joint Registrar Administration, as well as the Chairman Social Media Committee, to address the gathering. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Ekta. Our dear speakers and participants, it was an enriching experience for all of us to listen to our learned speakers during this course of this national webinar. I am sure that everyone here has gained deep understanding on the topic shared, especially the textile industry, how it is going to sustain after this pandemic. On behalf of our Honorable Vice Chancellor and the University, I extend our sincere thanks and gratitude to each of the speakers, the participants, and all who have contributed to this insightful webinar. We received an overwhelming response of more than 1,400 participants witnessing this webinar. I would also inform you that the videos of this webinar are available on our university's official Facebook handle, that is SHUATS Allahabad, and on our official YouTube channel, Connect SHUATS. Dear participants, your certificates are ready to download on our website, that is www.shuarts.edu.in/TAD certificate. TAD certificate. You can sign in and download the same using your credentials like your email ID, the mobile numbers which you have used during the registration process of this webinar. SHUATS is an institution with a remarkable history of 110 years. The institution has served with the motto "Serve the Land, Feed the Hungry." I'd like to inform you all the admission for various undergraduate and postgraduate programs for the session 2020-21 are open now. We currently offer 47 undergraduate programs and 110 postgraduate programs. Please do visit our official website, that is www.shuarts.edu.in, for any further details. Very soon you will be receiving an email from the organizing secretary of this webinar with links to download your participation certificate and also feedback form. I would like to share the screen so that you can download your web's participation certificate. The links are listed.
Thank you, sir, for acquainting the participants regarding the admission
Yeah,
procedure
I would
and
like to,
downloading the certificate.
Ekta, I would like to congratulate Dr. Ekta Sharma, Dr. Nargis Fatima, and Ms. Shivanjali Shukla for organizing this webinar in a very professional way. Also, congratulate Professor Dr. Dean, Dr. Mrs. Ranu Prasad, ma'am, for all her leadership in this webinar. I wish you all good health in these testing times. Stay safe, stay comfy. By the grace of Almighty, we will definitely overcome this pandemic together. Thank you. Over to you, Dr.
Thank you, sir. As we have reached towards the end of the webinar, but it will be not be complete without acknowledging and applauding the contribution of many in making this webinar possible. I therefore invite Dr. Nargis Fatima, another organizing secretary, to do the honor. Dr. Nargis, over to you.
Thank you, ma'am. Showing gratitude is one of the simplest yet most powerful things humans can do for each other. I, Nargis Fatima, on behalf of the organizing committee of the National Webinar on Apparel and Fashion World Post-Pandemic Perspectives, take this opportunity to express my deep sense of gratitude first and foremost to God Almighty for His never-ending grace and constant blessings on each one of us. I would like to express my profound gratitude and sincere thanks to our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Most Reverend Professor Dr. Rajendra B. Ralsar, for being a constant source of inspiration and for encouraging us in all our academic endeavors. I remain much obliged to Professor Dr. A.K.A. Lawrence, Pro Vice Chancellor, Academic Affairs and Quality Assurance SHUATS, for helping, guiding, and supporting us to conduct this event. We thank you, sir, for your unconditional support and guidance at all times. I take this opportunity to express my sincere thanks to Professor Dr. S.P. Lal, Pro Vice Chancellor, Administration, SHUATS, for his cooperation, ever-willing help, and valuable advice. I also express my gratitude to Reverend Professor Dr. S. Herbert, Pro Vice Chancellor, Planning, Monitoring, and Development, who is always there to help, encourage, and motivate us. I owe my gratitude to Professor Dr. Robin L. Prasad, Registrar, SHUATS, who is ever ready to extend a helping hand as and when needed. Thank you, sir, for your constant help and support rendered to us at all times. I would like to acknowledge the help, support, and cooperation extended to us by Engineer C.G. Wesley, Joint Registrar, Administration, as well as the Chairman, Social Media Committee, and the entire team for their ever-willing help and the technical support rendered to us in making this webinar possible. My sincere thanks go to our eminent speaker, Mr. Vivek Agrawal, Assistant Director, Garment Division, NITRA, Ghaziabad, for his enlightening lecture and insightful presentation. He highlighted the challenges faced by the local industry and mentioned possible actions to reinvent the apparel industry. I had an opportunity to hear you earlier also, which had left me mesmerized by the way you explain things in a very simplified manner. I am certain that all our participants are fortunate to get a chance to hear you, sir. We really appreciate that you took out time from your busy schedule to address the participants and share your expertise with us. We were also fortunate to have with us Dr. Gitika Jaspal, Assistant Professor, Fashion Merchandising and Design Department of Family and Consumer Science, College of Agriculture and Environmental Sciences, North Carolina State University, USA. It's always a delight to hear you, ma'am. Please accept our sincere gratitude for your stimulating lecture. I would like to express my gratitude to Mr. Georgie Sunny, Assistant Professor, Vellore Institute of Technology, Vellore, for his thought-provoking and interesting lecture. We were enthralled by your style and the constant content of your lecture. We thank you for sharing with us your valuable thoughts. My words may not be enough to express our gratitude towards Professor Dr. Ranu Prasad, Dean, Ethleind College of Home Science, who is always standing by our side. Her innovative ideas, valuable suggestions, coupled with amicable nature, An affectionate touch keeps us all motivated to accomplish all our endeavors with zeal and enthusiasm. We thank you, ma'am, for your support, guidance, and unending inspiration. I would like to place on record the support and valuable advice given to us by Dr. Anjali Mathur, Assistant Professor HDFS, and Dr. Nisha Chako, Assistant Professor FRMCS, who were there to support us in conducting this webinar. I could also I would also like to thank the entire faculty of Ethleind College of Home Science, who is always there to motivate, encourage, and support one another like a family. I am highly obliged to each one of them. I extend my heartfelt thanks to all participants for their complete involvement and enthusiastic participation in the webinar. We hope that this webinar has provided a better insight into the post-pandemic perspectives of apparel and fashion world and proved beneficial in understanding the effect of pandemic on the apparel and fashion industry and strategies that can be adopted to restore the industry. Last but not the least, I am happy to thank the organizing committee for their cooperation, support, and help in making this webinar possible. Thank you for attending the webinar. Stay protected, stay safe. Thank you.
Sam Higginbottom, University of Agriculture, Technology and Sciences, logging off. Jai Yeshu, Jai Hind, and Jai Bharat.